Well, hello. I think we have sound. Let me get me in the picture. That'll be better. Good morning. Well, it's noon, so happy Friday. That's probably a better thing to say. Thanks very much for coming by. Today we're going to talk about this really super fun build that I did last week. It's this little guy, and it's a 1/48 scale P40. And there was like three different liveries you could do, but I wanted to do the Flying Tigers. I thought, growing up, I loved the Flying Tigers. It was just part of, growing up. You knew about the Flying Tigers and America's involvement with China prior to World War II in the late 30s when Japan, the Japanese forces were attacking China's mainland. And so the U.S. Had kind of it was funded by the U.S. I can't tell you the whole story because I honestly don't know it to that degree. But from memory, it was a privatized U.S. led operation helping, before entering the war, helping China from the Japanese oppression because Japan at that time was attacking China. So I just thought it was a neat thing. I was also a huge fan of Pappy Boyington, the TV show in the 70s, the Black Sheep Squadron. Would watch it with my dad and my brother and just loved it. And Pappy Boyington flew with the Flying Tigers in real life, prior to World War II. So, and Pappy Boyington is from Washington State and went to the University of Washington. So there's this tie, and a Medal of Honor winner. Just amazing, amazing history there. So I had a lot of stuff tying me to the model, and that's why I chose Flying Tigers. And number two, I just thought it would be fun to have this high altitude diorama showing mainland China as the base. And I keep saying diorama because it's technically not a diorama, it's a base, it's a display base, whereas a diorama really tells a story, where this is almost a snapshot. So anyway, we're going to look at that. We're going to talk about the build, the 48 and 48, because I thought it was really fun. And what those builds are about and what they mean and all that kind of stuff. So possibly you could, if you didn't have the chance to participate, you can participate in one of these types of builds in the future, which I think is wonderful. So let's just dive right in. So I am going to shoot you over here. No, not there. I want here. That is these are my slides, I should say. And this, pardon me, was the 48 and 48. And this was so much fun because what it is it's 48 hours, everybody online, and it's international. It's all over the world. People are doing this. And I've talked about this before, but now after the fact, I got to talk about it more because it was a lot of fun. And so all over the world, people will log in at different times, but you could be online the entire time if you wanted for 48 hours. And in that 48 hours, you build from scratch a 48th scale model. You choose any model you want. You can, it's completely up to you. And so at about the 12-hour mark, I decided to build a display for it. So I've been building for 12 hours, and I said, well, hey, I want to do this. Maybe it was 24 hours because it was the night. Yeah, it was 24 hours. So it was halfway through the thing is when I started the display. And it was brilliant. I just really, really, enjoyed it. So that's what we're going to look at. Let's go back over here. So during the 48 and 48, they also had auctions. And one of the things for auctions, because, I've been looking for a job and so I didn't really have the ability to bid on stuff. I just didn't have the funds to do it. But I did want to participate, so I did that. But I also wanted to try to give some of my own time that they could auction. So they auctioned off a 2-hour block of time to be able to, I can work with somebody to build a diorama. And during the thing, I was just like, look, 2 hours, okay, fine, but that's not going to build a diorama. we're going to build a diorama together. So it was really cool because Crazy Loca was the winning bid for that. And so Crazy Loca and myself, once it's all, they have to do the money and all that kind of stuff. But once that's all done, we'll get together online. Crazy Loca can decide whatever model, want to build. And then once that's done, or maybe even in the planning stages of it, we'll build and construct a diorama together. Now, am I physically going to build it? No. Crazy Loca's going to physically build it, but I'm going to be coaching all the way and, like this, and we'll get online and do that. So I'm really looking forward to that, number one. But number two, it was just such a great thing for all of these people to participate in because the U.S. raised over $10,000. That's just the US element of this. The UK and Australia had their own because it was, global. And they also brought in I don't know about it was 10,000, but thousands of dollars. I think the US maybe did a little bit better. We're a bigger region. But man, what a remarkable thing. And again, last thing, and we can move on. This 48 and 48 is for Models for Heroes. It is a UK based group and it provides models and supplies and a community. And that's a big part of it. By having a community that both military veterans and first responders can go to and talk to people like myself. I mean, I haven't done that part of it yet, but I hope to. But they can talk to somebody online while they're building, it's like a group build kind of an atmosphere. And they have this in the UK already. I think they're working on it in Australia and New Zealand and the Southern Hemisphere. But that allows you to work with someone and ask questions and build this knowledge and build this community. And it's a very positive thing. And that's really, really important. It is a positive way for first responders and military veterans and military. They have some place to go with like individuals because there's a lot of military, doing it, myself included. There's lots of first responders. And I'll tell you, it's just, it's a wonderful group and it's a wonderful thing that they're doing. So very happy to be part of that. And that's what started this whole thing. So now, let's go back and I want to talk to you about why I chose this because it's a very simple reason as to why I chose this model. It's all I had really. I do particularly 35th scale. It had to be a 48th scale model. And so I just went to the shelf and it's like, man, what do I got? And I love aircraft. I love this airplane. That's why I have it. I don't build a lot of aircraft. The last airplane I built was a 109 for my Wolfenstein diorama. That was 3 years ago. So you can tell it, I'm not a huge aircraft builder, but I had a lovely time. Honestly, it was very fun. It was kind of not the best kit. This kit hilariously was modeled and basically cast, injection molded the year I was born. I was trying to hit it different, but the year I was born, 1964, it actually has that still imprinted on the bottom of the kit. Though this one I think was issued in like the 2000s, stuff like that. They used the same mold from 1964. So, is it a good kit? No. I mean, what we're talking about here is a fun kit. It's that old green plastic. Remember that? All the military was in green and sometimes cars were gray plastic or even white plastic. But, it's the old green plastic and, really simple design, not bad details. Thankfully, it was not warped. That's one of the things that you find in some of these old kits. You'll find these old kits and they've been in an attic or heck, who knows where, but they may have gotten heat. They may have gotten warped or something like that. Thankfully, this was not warped. But it wasn't necessarily that easy to build. There was these big, huge gaps along the fuselage. You put those together. You got to fill those. Here's me trying to put stuff together, And the other thing is, I chose this kit because it was very simple, low part count. Okay, I thought it's an old Revell kit. It's a slammer build, meaning that I'm just gonna put it together. Yes, I got rid of flash. Yes, I was careful about putting it together and prepping my parts before putting it together. But it's also skipping a lot of things that you might have done on a more planned build. That is the thing about a 48 and 48. If I'd have chose something different, like maybe a tank or something like that, much easier to paint in the end. Not weather, but paint. Maybe it would have been a little bit faster because I didn't quite finish, and I'll show you how I am or how far I got. But the point is, a slammer build is just to get it built so you can get it painted, and that's what I did. So I really concentrated on that, and I wanted to, not have to do anything extra. I didn't want to do any PE photo etch. I didn't want to do any mods or modifications or special. Again, get it together, get it painted, get it done. So that was the goal. So I'm going through this and I'm doing that. And then as I put this, the wings go together and then you try to join them to the fuselage and look at this flipping gap. That is, that's about a mile wide in there, and you look on some of these new kits, there's nothing like that. If you get a newer kit, like a Tamiya kit or any kit really that's produced, engineered and produced nowadays, they're so well engineered with CAD and stuff like that and 3D modeling that your kit pretty much goes together. There are exceptions, certainly. But the fact is, kits that are manufactured today are a heck of a lot nicer than the ones that were manufactured, like this one in the 60s, literally 1964. The year it was built is when this kit was, designed, printed, the whole thing. Well, not printed, but the mold was created. So back then, I think they had great detail on it. But the fit and finish, how it goes together, that's what this is. How this thing goes together, the fit and finish is pretty sloppy. There's big gaps and stuff doesn't quite fit, and like those holes on top of the fuselage on the nose there in front of the cockpit there, you can see they don't quite come up. The plastic comes together. It's really thin at the joining area. The plastic is like this thick here, and as it comes to that joint it kind of tapers off, so it's really thin where it joins. Really weird idea. Whereas today, gosh, they go together really nice. And the other thing is, there are tabs and pins, right? So you put it, not tabs and pins, but there are pins and I guess receptacles or whatever. When you put a pin into a receptacle in this model, it doesn't fit. It won't go flush. So that's some of the kind of stuff that you're dealing with on a model like this. It's not an easy build. So I just went through, worked on it as best as I could. Again, I did some fill. That's not putty filler. I used styrene for filler. I think it's just a lot stronger. Ghost was super funny. This is watching the UK guys, and I stayed up Saturday night till about 2:30. This is about 10 o'clock at night. Ghost doesn't stay in here that late. He goes to bed. But it was funny. I'm watching the Malcolm Reynolds was on and talking and doing stuff. And he was just fascinated. Now, this picture was not a snapshot. He was there for a good 20 minutes. And he would sometimes, he was fascinated with all the movement in hands and stuff like that. So he would go up and bat it and stuff. But it's just really cute that Ghost is now starting to get a little bit more comfortable on the bench, which I love, because Oscar, before Ghost, would sleep on the bench while it was building, which, it was wonderful. I loved painting and finding hair, Oscar hair in my models. I never minded it, ever. It was not a problem because I just loved Oscar on the bench. And it's really nice that Ghost is starting to, feel that same thing. So this was just a wonderful, wonderful thing. You can tell I love my cats. The wheels were just a nightmare. So this is just me sticking it on the end of a drill to get these things round. it's funny if you take a wheel today and you put it together and it's pretty round. There might be a little bit of seam and stuff like that. These, when you put them together, they were like this. You know what I mean? And you'll see that with older models. You'll put something together and it'll have shifted or something like that. So it doesn't quite fit. So what I did was I just stuck it in here in my drill and just kind of sanded them so that they were, and they came out great. It worked fine, but it was kind of funny. Is this correct? So again, being not building a lot of this stuff, I'm just going fast and I'm doing all this kind of stuff. And I put the landing in here because I was going to have it flying. I put the landing gear in up, retracted. And man, they're just completely wrong. They're wrong. And I did glue them in. I do take care of it later, but it was kind of funny. These are actually flipped. They should be turned over so you can see the gear and stuff like that. So I did fix that a little bit later on. Hey, we got some folks coming in here. Whelans is here. Hello, Whelans. It has been so long. It's so wonderful to see you. Thank you very much for coming in, Whelans. And then Bob's here. Hello, Bob. Thanks very much for coming in. Been talking to a lot to Bob lately. He really liked this project. And thanks very much, Bob. I really do appreciate that. It was really super fun. And so, yeah, I think that there are more of these builds in my future. So it is to paint. I got it to paint the first day. So no, because I started at 9 o'clock at night on Friday. So this is about Saturday in the afternoon. I got it to paint. So it wasn't actually the first day. There's those wheels again. I fix them later. I painted it blue, like a sky blue, and then I taped up the bottom. And then I painted it, the top of it, with this tannish color. And then, I don't know if you've used this. This was something that I had not used. Whoop, that's the wrong thing. This is something that I had not used before getting back into modeling. But this is plastic putty. And it's from AK. And that's what you see on the model here. And it's great. I don't know. It's just something, I think it's pretty common these days, but I hadn't used it before probably 4 or 5 years ago. And it's great. Prior to this, I did use silly putty, and it's pretty much like silly putty, because what it'll do is it'll go on there instead of masking with tape like it did on the bottom, which had to stay there for a while, so that's why that was important. But doing this camo, you can just put on this putty, it'll stay there, adheres real nice, and gives you pardon me, sharp lines. And that's something I'm going to talk about here in just a second when we go back to the other picture. But it'll give you nice sharp lines. And so went ahead and did that and then pulled it off, and that's what we got. Now, let's talk about these sharp lines. I'm just thinking I need these two patterns to make camo. But when I looked at my reference pictures, it wasn't a crisp line. It's not. And for those of you that do aircraft, you already know this. There's kind of like a standoff, a way of creating more of a shadowed line than a crisp line there. And I just forgot. I have done this before, but I just forgot to do it because I was in a rush. And what it is on the plane, I've got some pictures here, and I think this will show it much better. This is a reference picture that I didn't necessarily want to load it up because it was somebody else's picture. But do you see this line right here? This is the dark, going to the light, and it's not a crisp line. Now, some of that can be, okay, scale-wise, it should look crisper the further away you are, but it was still too crisp. So there is a way to handle that, and it's just simply having a higher edge that maybe curls under on this. It's something I'll have to do a video on because it's real easy to do, or you can do it with paper, or tape doesn't work because tape gives you a clean line. But what you want to do basically is have this with a little bit of an edge so it doesn't go all the way down. So like this is the model, okay? And then like here's the edge of the of this when it's applied, okay? So we're kind of looking at a macro look. So here's the edge of it. If you have the edge coming down to a very thin like this, I'm going to get a crisp line right there when I paint. If I have this kind of over like this, the edge of this putty that's on there, let's go to a picture so you can kind of see the putty real quick. If I have it over the line, so it's not coming down real sharp, you know, again, the edge of that putty can be like this. You'll get a sharp line. If you have the edge of putty like this, I'm shooting on this side, then I'll get a little bit more of a dull, not so crisp of a line for this right here. And that's what I'm concerned about. You see that? That's more of a faded line. And that's because in real life, they're spraying that stuff on. So you have, you know, that shadowed line, or I don't know exactly how you call it, but it's not crisp. It's not a big deal, but it's these little tiny things about technique and doing it and blah, blah, blah that really stick in my mind when I'm doing it, saying, okay, next time I'm not doing that. And so that was just, I just wanted to make sure that point was across. When you're using this stuff, you can make these changes. You can do it this. You don't have to go to a different method. And different methods are using basically double stick tape and then having like paper, like cut out a pattern paper where it stands off the model a little bit. And so then a little bit of that will go underneath and it'll get you that really cool kind of a faded edge to your paint. Like I said, I'll do a video on that because it is something I've done before and it works great. I just completely spaced when I was doing it on this model because of the time. And it's just something because I haven't built one in so long. I need to get back into it. So it was a lot of fun. I really, really enjoyed building it. And yeah, I think it came out okay. So let's take a look here. I pull that stuff off. The other thing that happened at this point was I'm looking at my reference pictures and I'm like, man, it's awfully tan. It's just it's like very bright, you know, and these are the proper colors that it calls out to paint it with. But I'm like, man, it's just so bright. Did I make the green too small and the tan too big? Anyway, so here I'm doing the nose cone. Very simple to do. And this is the end of 48 hours. So at the end of 48 hours, this is what I got. I had everything painted. I had the display base built, partially painted. I have, and I'll show you how to do this a little bit later on as I start talking about the display base. But I had this little mount mounted in it that went into the aircraft to hold it at a specified angle. I had all my decals on, but I hadn't done any weathering and I hadn't touched the canopy yet. So that was the end of 48 hours. I was happy with it, but obviously I didn't finish. So after that, I said, that's it. This is how it looks. Good to go. I'm going to go ahead and just put this away and I'll finish it this weekend. You know, that was totally the plan. I was not going to work on this week because there was definitely some more stuff I wanted to do to it, you know, not finishing it. I just wanted to finish it. But I said, you know, I need to get back to my D&D diorama. It's like my primary thing right now. I'm working on a storyline. I'm working on all kinds of finishing and stuff like that. All faded into the background. I was just obsessed, kind of, with finishing this. So during the day, I'm looking for a job, and then in the afternoons, I'm doing editing because I got another video coming up that I really needed to go out last Saturday. It did not. I'm hoping for tomorrow. So I'm still editing and all that kind of stuff. But then after work, you know, in the evenings, I had to get back on this thing. It was just, and I think the reason I'm saying this is, if you haven't built in a while and you're just wondering, boy, am I going to get into it and just like, nah, whatever. Holy cow. It was so fun. The model was bringing me back to it. I had gotten into that little area where I was having a blast and I didn't want it to stop. It's not to say I don't have a blast working on my D&D diorama, but I've been working on it for 10, 11 months, right? So this was something new. and it was something I could kind of do quick and knock out because I'm pretty well done now. There's a couple things I want to do, but I might do that this weekend, whatever. But it's pretty well done now. So after 1 week, the weekend of 48, and then this week it's done. That was a pretty fun feeling to finish off a complete project pretty much in a week. So I was just having a blast. And so I went back to it, and I did not go back to my diorama, my D&D diorama that I figured I'd be working on this week. I just kind of piled into this and started working on it. So the following day, just the very next day, I started working on the canopy. And when I did my canopy, I didn't have, a little thing to do because you can buy masking kits that mask all these windows beautifully. But what I did do, and let me back up because again, I haven't done a ton of this stuff, and it's been years since I've done it. So masking a canopy, I was really, boy, am I going to just mess this thing up. And then I saw somebody online doing it. As a matter of fact, I want to say it was Bruce Worrell. If you haven't seen Bruce Worrell on Facebook and stuff, his builds are remarkable. Oh my gosh, amazing stuff. And I was talking to Bruce during the 48 hours, so I'm hoping it was him, but I think it was him where I saw him masking in a certain way where he only masked one direction. What I mean by that is, I've got all this different masking that I have to do on this, and we'll go to a different picture to show. So that's what it looks like. But I was thinking I needed to kind of mask on the inside and do all of the frames. But then I saw online, well, they just masked the ones going over the top first, shot those, and then came back and did the others. And it was just like, duh. It's just one of those things where you're saying, oh no, I need to do something. And I know how I have to do it. And then I kind of got tunnel vision. I didn't think of a different way to do it. And then when I saw someone else, and I believe it was Bruce, when I saw someone else doing it this way, I'm like, well, that's just the simplest. And I felt kind of dumb for not figuring it out myself. I'm like, well, that's it. I did it and it was great. And I was a little bit worried about, shooting these. So I shoot these, going over the top. But then I got to mask over it to shoot the horizontal ones, after the fact. And I mean, it dried for maybe 30 minutes in my curing cabinet, so it had a good, it's like 90 degrees in there when I've got it curing. Man, it went on and went off just perfect. And I got really nice, crisp, clean lines for the canopy. I don't know what they call the supports on the canopy. Mullions. I mean, that's, window, they call it mullions, but, the frame, I guess. And it worked out great. So it's just those little things that, you haven't done it for a while and you refigure it out. And it's like, oh, that's just great. And so it just kind of removed that. I did talk about last week, I think, a little bit about that. What's it called? When you're trying to get into something, there's this barrier. This barrier of entry, and most of the time that barrier of entry or that steep learning curve or whatever they want to say that keeps people from doing stuff. And that was me. I haven't done an airplane for a while because it's a pain and this, and I'm always thinking about a diorama. How do you diorama a plane? Well, that thought process was in there and it stayed there in my brain. And that was my barrier to doing one of these. And it just demonstrated again, which it typically always does, that those barriers are typically mental and self-imposed. Those barriers sometimes can be financial, sometimes they can be physical, sometimes they can be lack of resources and stuff like that. But in this instance, it was a mental barrier that kept me from doing this. So the reason I bring that up is I really had such a fun time building this, and it's not something that I typically build. So if you're worried about, nah, it's not my thing, or I don't know if I'm going to enjoy it, or whatever, I think you need to try. Please try, because it was such a fun thing. Now, yeah, I've been building models my whole life, so if you're brand new to it, it might be a little bit different. But I would say this, if you're building, or you haven't built in a while, or even never built, give yourself that opportunity. I find that all of my past experiences in wood shop and just skills of crafting, whatever you want to call it, all of those skills, they come in. Maybe they're not specialized to building an airplane or an aircraft or doing whatever processes an aircraft needs, because it's slightly different than the other models that I build. Do it. Just do it. It is so different than what I typically do. Number one, I'm challenging and I'm learning. But some of those barriers, some of those things that I thought were going to be difficult, in fact, were not. As long as I started in, or as soon as I started in, and I just did it, I just had a blast. I had such a fun time that's what's missing if you let that entry barrier stop you. You know, this week I had a lot of wonderful comments about building this, and I just, some of them were like, man, I haven't built one in such a long time. I couldn't do that. Well, that was exactly what I said to myself, okay, ahead of this. That's why I hadn't built one in a long time. It's like, nah, I kind of do this and I kind of do that. Man, it just, that defeating thought, or that self-sabotage, whatever you want to call it, was not helpful. And it was all up here. And once I committed to this 48 and 48 and picked a model, and it was like the third model I picked. I was like, this one, whatever. And then when I finally started, it was that one. I just had a blast. And it was fun. And the skills were there. Again, that whole thing of, I don't know what I'm doing, but all that past history of skills kind of came to the fore, and you can figure it out. And I think that that'll happen for you if you're looking at doing it, or if you're wondering about doing it, or, man, can I build a model today? It's been so long. Yeah, you can. I'm not saying it's going to turn out awesome, but that is not awesome. there's so many things that are wrong with this. But I had a blast, and that's the number one thing. It was not, how good can I do? Certainly I want to do good. But what kept me doing it was the fun, the challenge, the difference, the new perspective. Instead of thinking this, which is about a 35th scale figure, I had to start thinking of a figure that was like that. And my fingers are barely touching, but I mean, people in this scale are, in this scale, a flea would be the size of an elephant. So that's how tiny it is. And trying to relate to that scale was really, really fun, because, and we're going to talk about this next, building the base, building the little display for it, when I started looking deep into that, and we're going to do that, I just started seeing all these things, because you shift your perspective of 35th scale down to whatever millionth scale I'm at. I don't know. I haven't calculated or anything like that. But it was a lot of fun. So let's go and take a look at this display. I think that's pretty much, well, I probably have some more aircraft build pictures. That's not what I want to do. I want to do this. So there's, more pictures. So no, here, what I'm showing you is I started doing silver, try to do some chipping and stuff like that. I added these. The original parts for that sight and that little front sight pin that you'd use to kind of line up, those in the original kit were so flimsy, I replaced them with a couple of white metal parts that I had. So I did do some mods, but it was just because the plastic parts, I didn't think they would like stay together to hold in there. Now in this, you'll see that I'm starting to do a little bit of weathering. You see around the panel there, it's a little brownish. And so I did oil weathering on it this time, which I'm not a big person in weathering in oils, but I really, had a good time. So here is the this is burnt umber. I also used burnt sienna, but burnt umber and burnt sienna, and I put it on there. You can tell pretty heavy, and then I come back and I start wiping it away and defining it with a whiter brush and a little bit of mineral spirits, and it worked. I was really happy with it. It started looking good, and then I also took all of it off and redid it. Not all of it, but a lot of it, and redid it because what I wasn't getting is a grunge. Here, I'm trying to glue in the side of that rear panel, and it would stick out. So I've just got a rubber band, and then that little white thing in there puts pressure right where it needs to be and not on the rest. And it just worked out great. And so glued that in. So there it is. That is where it's at today. Again, you can see some really heavy weathering on there. I still need to work on that weathering a little bit on the wing. You can see that's too much, but I'm having a good time with it. And here's after I took some of that off, and I'm trying to make it grungy. See there around in front of the behind the pipes and stuff like that. I'm trying to get some grunge. I'm really trying to get some stuff that's been put on, it's been wiped off, it's built up some more. That's the kind of grunge that I want on here. And at some point, I said to myself, gee, am I going too far on this? Do I have to like wipe all this out and start again? And that's when I went back to my reference pictures and I looked at some cool reference pictures online and stuff like that. And this one's great because it shows, what the fuel and the oil does right behind on the left side of the aircraft. That's oil and fuel streaming down on a real aircraft. That gave me kind of I guess the license to go as hard as I was going, with this grunge and this weathering. I love to really make it look like this thing is lived in, that whole Star Wars used universe thing that George Lucas, kind of introduced in space. Well, I wanted that same thing on my aircraft, and I pretty much do it on all mine. I love heavy weathering. I think it looks more natural to me, just to me. So it was a lot of fun. Bob says, an artist is never satisfied or finished. You're absolutely correct. It is really hard to finish anything because you're going, man, I could do a little bit there, a little bit there. What is outstanding is subpar for the creator. Well, thanks. I appreciate that. But it's very true. Lots of people are like that. When you're looking at your stuff, it's not that I beat up the things or people that even do this. I think a lot of people have this kind of thing in their mind. It's not that I'm beating myself up on what I've created. It's just that the more I look at it, I look at things that I say that could be done better. I think that you're really good at picking out the things that aren't where you want them as a creator, to try to get the finest element where it should be that supports the other elements. So just looking at this, what I'm thinking here is I've got these stacks, I've got these exhaust, and that exhaust is blowing along the side of the fuselage. But it's in rain, it's in tropical storms, pardon me. It's going through all kinds of stuff. So some of that stuff washes away and then it gets reapplied. So here in this picture, I have not reapplied some of that exhaust that does gather on the side of the fuselage. I have not reapplied that, and it needs it. So that's kind of the stuff that I'm going to be working on going forward. Okay, so now let's start talking about mainland China, the display. This is it. So again, we're about 24 hours into it. I want to say it was around 9 or 10 o'clock on Saturday evening that I started carving this. I was actually online with the guys, and the US contingent just came offline because they go in 4-hour blocks, online with the build 48 and 48. And they just came off, and I came over and sat back down, and Scott Gentry's here, and all the guys, just wiped out from an entire day of doing this. And I come online, and they're here, And that's when I started working on this. So that was it was nice to get a kind of a time frame, because people ask me, how long does it take to do this stuff? Well, this picture right here is about 9 o'clock, 9 p.m. on Saturday evening. I worked until 2:30 in the morning and and built that. Let's see what some other pictures look like. So here's the front of it. This is actually the back side of it. But here's the front of it. And what I've done here is I've carved all this with, like I normally do with my rotary tool. I use a Fordham, and I carved all this, and I don't really, I mean, I have an idea that the lower the pink side is below like the tree line, and then the gray is the mountains. That's why I started painting them that way. But I didn't really have an idea as to where everything would be. I knew I was creating a couple of valleys, and I wanted to have, you can see on the right hand side, there's like 3 little valleys that come in and converge. And so that's what I had here. Now remember, this thing is about, I don't know, 10 by 6. I'll measure it for you, but it's pretty small. So down here, after I got the main paint in, I started painting in rice paddies. That was the first thing I did, was the little rice paddies. And these 2 views just show the topography a little bit better there because of the shadows. Here's the same shot, just without the shadow line, so you can't really see the mountains. Or how steep this is coming up from the valley. Here you kind of can. You can kind of see it with those shadows. This is the full front of it. In the middle, I wanted a lot of rock coming down, so you can see in the middle there's some rock, the grayish paint in the green. And then I started doing these little roads. Those are supposed to be little villages. Down here on the bottom, the little tan spots, those are supposed to be villages with homes and stuff like that. Now this is the idea. So on this box, if you look real closely on the box, I'm going to go up here and try to get to that box. Here's the box. If you look closely, they're over China. That's a Japanese 0 in the background, about 9 o'clock in the picture there, the painting. And so this was what I was kind of going for. You can see the grit, by the way. That's part of the reason I wanted to get the grit on my painting. But it was that terrain below it that I thought was fascinating. Now, I didn't want to do a desert terrain. I thought it wouldn't necessarily say China like this. It's very, deserty. But that's why, now I'm going to see if I can get back to that picture all the way down here. But that's why, sorry, we're almost there. There we go. That's where this image came from. The idea that this would going to be flying over that was from that box art. So that's where the idea of making the diorama came from, just the box art, which is wonderful. I love the fact that the box art is influencing, number one, how we paint it. I think that's pretty standard for everybody. But also the display, having over the box art. Even the attitude that it's flying in, I wanted to recreate that. So to mount it, I just drilled this little hole in the bottom, or in it. This is a little piece of aluminum. I put a cap on it. This is some putty that I mixed together, filled that hole, and then popped that little aluminum piece in there. Now, when I did that, it was meant to be able to take that thing out, but it all glued in, so nothing comes out. It's permanent. Once that was in, I started looking at the trees. Now, the tree line, I didn't show you how I did. I did do it on video. But basically, in doing the tree line, I'm going to take this. I'm going to take the P40 off of here so I can show you. When I did the tree line, what I basically did was I came in here and I decided where my tree line was going to be, right along here, kind of the swath, okay? And then I did above it over here, I did like some tan and stuff like that, because above the tree line, sometimes there's not as much greenery and stuff like that. And then I just put down Woodland Scenic's scenic glue, just little blobs of it. And then I took the turf, it's medium turf from Woodland Scenics, and I pressed over that glue. Once that sat for, I don't know, good half an hour, I stuck it in the curing cabinet. About a half an hour at 90 degrees, I was able to take that and then brush away very, very carefully brush away with I use these. This is, Mrs. Modelcraft got this for me. I don't wear makeup. This is a makeup brush. And these, are super soft. And so they're great, number one, for dusting your models. That's what I use them primarily for, because they're not going to grab stuff and mess it up. Because even paintbrushes are harder or stiffer bristles than this. But this makeup brush, really light, and I can go on there. And I brushed away everything of the turf that wouldn't be forest. And so that's how I got this. So I've got the little trees and forests at about mid-level. I got a little bit up in the right-hand corner, but that gave me the three different zones I was trying to get: the lowlands, the midlands, and then the mountains. In here, I tried to also create some interest. So I put some water, I put some streams, there's waterfalls. Here, right in there's a rock fall, there's a big rock slide in there. There's the rock slide. You can see there's a little tiny trail to the left of it. We're going to talk about those. And then here, it's kind of it's kind of hard to see. But right up here, if you can see my mouse, right there, there is a small cave. That's what this is in the back. And then in front of that, there's this little obelisk. And I loved the idea of the obelisks. And here you can kind of see the winding trail that goes up there into the mountains. I just wanted something that looked like it was this ancient place that the people would go for whatever purpose, the complete fantasy. But I kind of like that thing. So this is really, really close in. That little pillar that's supposed to be, I don't know, 35, 40 feet, 50 feet tall, something like that, or even more. That pillar is a little tiny rock that's like about that tall. It's about 3/16. It's not quite a quarter of an inch, So I thought it was kind of fun. Now, on another place, and the reason I use rocks, I wanted something that would stand out like a deity or something like that. But I was like, man, I can't carve something that small. And if I carved it as small as I think I could, I think it would be too big. It would be like one of these gargantuan, Buddhas that they have, the real ones. So I thought rock, just a rock, it is in the 30s, so it's in 1930s, late 1930s. So still very rural and stuff like that in many parts of the world. And so I thought just a massive stone effigy almost would work. And I like how it came out. And the trail and everything going up to it, I think was really fun. Now, I think I've got some tighter shots of the trail. Sorry. That's the village. Oh, I know what I was trying to show here. See that little rock to the left? Kind of like the left of center. That's another massive rock. That rock would be, I don't know, the size of a building or a few buildings, almost like a city block. So it's this massive glacial rock I put there, and trails going to it and stuff like that. The other thing is, here's the little rivers and streams and the waterfalls that come down. Here are the trails that go between the different villages and the paddies. Let's see, I had another picture that I'm trying to show you. Okay, so the trail here, I guess this is the best picture I've got of the trail. Putting these little trails in here, you see, right? I hope you can see my mouse going in there. Putting these trails in, you see it's kind of straight here, and then here it goes to switchbacks. So I've done a fair amount of hiking. I grew up in the Northwest, and we would go hiking quite a bit. So when I'm trying to put these little trails on there, it's basically, how is the trail going to look? Well, there's going to be switchbacks on steep. So as I'm going that trail up to that point that I want to go, if the terrain gets steep, I put switchbacks. If it levels out, I kind of go a little bit straighter. And then again with the thing. So those little things, I think, are going to make a visual impact. When you look at it, you're going to recognize, hey, even if it's not necessarily all that steep, the impression that the switchbacks will make it even appear steeper. You know what I mean? That's kind of some of the stuff that I try to put in there. I also highlighted the little tiny rocks and the boulders. You know, I try to pick those out because you would see that stuff. So anyway, that is what I came up with for my diorama or my display, and I'm pretty darn happy with it. It was something that I found would pull me back to it. I would say I put more work into the display base than I did the aircraft. I enjoyed building this. I thought it was great. But for me, it is the scratch building and it is the terrain. I love doing terrain for some reason. I really, really enjoy that. And that kept me super engaged in this project, super engaged that I wanted to finish it. I really wanted to get back to a point where I was just working on it. You know, I just really wanted to finish it off. And that was the great thing about doing something a little bit different, something that I wasn't really sure I would be good at. You know, all these things that kind of hit me with, I don't know, all that stuff went away because it was so fun to work on. So that was what I did this week, and again, it was just so fun. I wanted to talk about it a little bit more, and I'm definitely going to be doing more of this kind of a diorama. It was very fast. It was real easy to go ahead and build. And I was able to knock something out that I was really having a lot of fun with in a short amount of time instead of a 10-month or a 12-month build, which is not unheard of for me at all. As a matter of fact, the last 3 years, that's what I've done I've done 4 dioramas in the last 3 years. That can tell you how, much time I put into these. And I think the detail I was able to get out of this base, this display, was on par with what I'm doing, so I don't have to do big. I think is something that it told me, or it showed me. I can do a smaller display. I can do something with as much detail as I want to put into it, and enough of a story and interest that it'll be engaging, and you'll want to look at it, because that's the reason I do it. I want it to be engaging, and I want you to be able to look at the diorama for a long time and find new things. Well, this does that. This little display fits that mold, and I like it quite a bit. So now I'm trying to figure out what my next project is going to be, because my project is almost done. My D&D diorama is almost done. And so I got to come up with a new project. Well, instead of just this singular view of what I'm going to be building next, pardon me, now I've got another idea of something that's just still within my wheelhouse, but it's slightly different. So, and faster. That's got to be a big deal, because I would like to do multiple projects this year instead of just one, with multiple episodes. Once I'm done with the D&D diorama, I am going to do some smaller dioramas. I'm still doing dioramas. That's what I do. But I think I need to explore a little bit more of the display like I did for this, because this was super fun. So that is what I am going to do. A little bit about Patreon. I'll talk to you about that real quick. So I'm going to start posting back to Patreon, and it's something that I've been trying to do. I have not been charging for Patreon this is the second month, because I wasn't sure that I was getting enough proper content out there for Patreon. I didn't feel like the things I was offering on my Patreon people were as interested in. I have some great Patreon folks. Here they are. These are great folks, and they've subscribed to it. And what I felt was I wasn't giving them the value for what they were subscribing. So that's why I suspended it for a month. Now we're going into 2 months. But this is the last month of that. I am going to be bringing it back. I said last week I'm going to give you some. I'm going to send out some little surveys to folks, because I'd love to hear what you'd like to see on for the content of the channel, because this is the big issue with my Patreon. I have one level now, just one level on Patreon. It's $3, and you can see everything on there. And I also hosted two different kind of events. Number one was a Friday night group build. It was 2 hours. It was from 6 to 8 p.m. on Fridays. It was typically me and one other person, John Robeck, fantastic guy. And it was just me and John most of the times. There was nothing wrong with that. I love doing this stuff with John. But I was not gaining any folks on Patreon. And other than John and I doing that, I mean, maybe, sometimes people would pop in, but it was very rare. So that told me I was not offering a value that people wanted. This was an offering that people weren't saying, yeah, I want that. Okay, that's the key. So that's why I stopped it. So now I need to figure out, to keep my Patreon going, what people want. I want to put stuff up that is to the level that you want to see and is exclusive. That's the other thing about Patreon, is it can be exclusive. And if I can't figure that out, Patreon is gone. It's just that, And the reason is I have tried for so long to get these different venues or different outlets to get stuff that I put out there, that people can see and enjoy and feedback and all that kind of stuff. And the primary driver of that, the one that really does work, is YouTube. It's not working on Patreon. It didn't really work on Instagram. It's just, these platforms are different than what I thought. So the content I'm putting there, whatever the case may be, it's just not working out. So I'm not the kind of person that continues to run headlong into the brick wall. After a couple of shots, I'm going to, try to get around it, over it, or under it. So that's what's happening with Patreon. So next month, I will start charging again. This month, I am and when I say month, it was, I believe, the 17th is when it'll start charging again next month. Okay. So I've got a month between now and then ish. And I will start posting again. And I'm going to see if I can get some engagement. I'm going to see if folks are open to it and they like what I'm putting up. And with their feedback, I'll make that determination. And it is really up to those folks' feedback as to determine what I'm going to be showing on Patreon in the future. I really want to do it, but I'm not going to do it if it's not delivering what people want. It does not make sense. Me sitting on a Sunday afternoon for 3 hours in front of this computer waiting for people to log in and nobody does is not a good use of my time. It's just that simple. I don't want to sound like a jerk, but that just tells me that nobody wants to be there, or it's the wrong time, or whatever the case may be. So that is what I'm trying to solve. If I have an event, I want people to show up because that means they value it. And then I believe I can charge them $3 a month to do it. That's what Patreon is to me. If I have it wrong, you tell me. I'm ready to listen. But for my money and my time, Patreon wasn't doing it. So that's what's with Patreon. But if I can figure that out and I can give people what they want to see there and they value that content, Patreon will stay. So it's an experiment at this time. And during the experiment, like I said, I'm not charging people. I got to figure it out. Okay. Hey, Christian's here. Hello, Christian. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate you coming on. Did it show? There we go. How's it going, Christian? I never called you this week. I said last week I wanted to give you a call and we'd do a meeting and stuff like that. It has just been a nightmare. But I would like to do that. Maybe this afternoon. I don't know what you're doing this afternoon. If possible, because I'd love to talk. Because we got stuff to talk about. Because Christian and I work on our channels together and try to figure out how to do better. So if you haven't seen Hobby Arte, really do need to take a look at it. Christian is an amazing builder. Way better at painting and finishing of aircraft than I am. Thank you very much. And that was one of the things that I was so impressed with Christian when I first met him, was that level. I'm in awe. So thank you very much for Christian for coming on, and let's see about. I'll contact you after we're done, which we're almost done. So thank you very much. Well, thanks, folks. That, like I said, that's about it. I really appreciate you coming on today. And next week, I should be back on working on the story, for the campaign. I have so many wonderful people still sending me ideas about the campaign. And I'll probably start with my videos next week, asking for more. But the fun thing is and what I'm talking about is I have a D&D diorama, very big. I've been working on it for a long time, if you're not aware of that. And it's just about done. And so I'm trying to create a written campaign so that I can play it online. And folks have been sending me in their ideas and their suggestions because I'm not a DM. I don't know how to build a campaign. And I think that's going to be a lot of fun. And I do want to play that online. That can happen while I'm working on another project. That's fine because it'll be a secondary thing. But that is one of the main goals in finishing up that diorama and getting on to my next project. So thanks very much. I'm continuing to work on that. And wonderful, Christian. I will contact you probably a half an hour after we stop. After I'm done with this, I take about a half an hour to get my brain back in my head. But yeah, I'll contact you and we can set up a time for this afternoon. That's wonderful. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate that, Christian. Well, folks, thank you so much again. I hope you have a wonderful weekend coming up. If you get the opportunity to build a model, heck, send me some pictures. I'd love to show your model on the live stream. That's a lot of fun for me. And if you have a channel or if you have like an Instagram or whatever, how you show your stuff, Facebook, whatever, send me that stuff and then we'll feature it on a future live stream. Live streams are every Friday at noon. Those ain't changing. So I would love to see some of your stuff on the live stream so we can talk about it. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. That is about it for me. I'm going to get back to it. And Christian, I'll give you a call about half an hour, sir. I hope you're having a wonderful day. We'll see ya.